Welcome to AngularNYC special edition. At some point, I thought it would be cool if we could invite a bunch of English-speaking speakers and basically have an English version of Angular Moscow meetup. And this is why all of us are here. So I'll ask you today, please try speaking English. I know some of the people here don't speak English really well, and that's okay. Do your best. We all will try to speak slowly and nicely so everybody can understand us. And one thing I'll also like to ask you is please put your phone on silent vibrate. Even if you have really nice melody, still be respectful to your peers. We also have code of conduct. That's something we do in New York, so I would love to do it here. Please, everybody, be kind and nice to each other. If anybody feels uncomfortable at any point, please talk to me or any of the other organizers. Margot is here. Alexei, who knows Alexei Okhrimenko? Okay, so he has some design skills you can see here. But he was really excited about all the awesome communities you have in Russia related to Angular. The biggest is the Angular RU chat. This is where all the Russian Angular stuff is going on. There are chats by topics. There is Angular Moscow chat. So I'll leave it here just for 15 seconds if anybody wants to join any of those great chats. There's also apparently VK group and Twitter and meetup, so a bunch of things. So if anybody wants to take a photo, now is the time. Yeah. I am the organizer of Angular New York. This is why it's called Angular New York. Out of all those things, I think YouTube channel is the most useful. So we upload all our videos on YouTube, and this is where you can see what's going on in New York when we're not here. We have 3 amazing speakers and maybe me if time permits. Juan will go first. He'll talk about the worst practices in Angular. Then we'll have Max Salnikov, and he'll talk about Angular and PWA. Max speaks Russian, but me and him will try speaking English, so you'll have to bear with us. This is me. I was testing this presentation 15 minutes before we left to this place, so hopefully it will work. If not, I'll just pretend that we don't have enough time and we have to do Q&A with Minka as soon as possible. And this is Minka. Minka is from Bulgaria. He's an amazing dude. He is on the Angular team. He's a DevRel. I think he came to Moscow and spoke at Angular Moscow at some point. So this is the URL. I'll leave it here for about a minute so you can join, and this is where you would ask questions. Cool. We also have a beginner meetup, so probably none of you would be interested since everybody is super professional here. But if you have friends who are interested to learn Angular, this is where you can go. It's a special masterclass. It's available in English and in Russian, so you can learn the basics of Angular here. It's on this Saturday in IPONWeb. It's on meetup.com/Angular Moscow. And after the event, we are all going to Beer.js. So there are 2 ways to get there. You either follow this thing on Google Maps, here is the address, or you'll have to find this dude, who's apparently very funny. He's sitting right there. And just follow him and he will go there. I think this is the last slide. Last thing, I would like to thank Raiffeisen for hosting us. Here's Margarita and Sergey. Thanks, everybody who's helping us. If you want to say something for 10 seconds.
Hello, everyone. Hi, once again.
Hello.
We're glad to welcome you here in Raiffeisenbank. We love to make meetups. There are more than 40 professional communities in our bank, and they all make their own meetups. So we have meetups of every taste, and you can monitor us on TimePad and Hover. So please, you're welcome anytime. That's
Cool,
all.
thank you. And then, without further ado, I would like to welcome Juan to the stage. Welcome, Juan.
Thank you. Can I use the mic? Thanks. Hello, everybody. I'm very, very excited to be here. Today I'm going to talk about Angular worst practices, but before, you should know that this is my name in case you don't know how to spell it, because I have issues sometimes trying to tell people how you write my name. It's all right. Also want to remind you that perhaps some of you are not so comfortable with English, and that's completely fine. In my country where I was raised and born, in Colombia, we don't speak English either that often, and it's normal. It's completely normal, and I think it's both responsibility. It's you trying to improve every day, but it's also people who already speak English trying to give you the opportunity to actually practice it. And this is the opportunity. You should know that Colombia is very far, far away, but I didn't came all the way from there. I actually, 3 months ago, I moved to Austria to Graz. So right now I'm living in Europe. Instead of presenting my CV and all the things I have accomplished, I think it's more relevant for me to share what I've built. And one thing I built is called NGNow. NGNow is a bootmarklet that you can put in your browser and will automatically run any Angular project in StackBlix. So what you do is that you drag it to your browser, and then you go to an Angular project in GitHub. Then once you go and click the bootmarklet, and automatically runs in a StackBlix in a matter of seconds. Of course, I'm not doing anything special here. StackBlix is. Nevertheless, when I created this thing, people were really surprised. Like, wow, what a great idea. It's like, this is the most amazing idea ever, NGNow. What's interesting, though, is that this NGNow thing is just one line of code, and it's this one. But yes. Among other one-liners that I created is this one. It will improve the accessibility of your application. So if you like accessibility, you'd rather include this one in your styles. And this was also very, very, applauded in social media. Like, whoa, this is so genius. Anyway, I'm also the founder of a community in Medellin called Angular Medellin. Also co-organized and founded NG Colombia, the first Latin American conference of Angular. Perhaps I can show the video later. And I want to make a final stop to remind you of, there's a person that was sitting in that cafeteria yesterday, and this person was Kier, who was trying to make sure everything worked out completely fine today. And I think he deserves an applause. So please give it an applause for Kier. Yes. Which happens not to be, yeah, it's here. Anyway, I'm a Google developer expert in Angular and web technologies. That if you cannot see me, I'm right there. And I can help you as well if you have any questions about Angular and web technologies in general. I'll be more than happy to help you. Also, if you are interested in becoming a Google developer expert, then you can ask me how. In the breaks, just reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to nominate people here. I've nominated 4 or 5 people already, and they are now Google developer experts. So perhaps the next one is in this room. So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter as JDJuan, and let's get started. So you can find the slides on slides.com/JDJuan. And let's start with the most important thing, the problem. Why are you supposed to listen to this talk? Which problem am I going to solve to you? So the problem, it's this one. When you build Angular applications, this is how it feels like sometimes. It takes time to kind of master it, and you're struggling, and then it's like, oh, damn it, it's so hard. And then I want to show you that sometimes when you're reviewing code, you find things like this, and you're like, God, what is this? Perhaps some of you didn't laugh because you didn't understand what this is about. It's fine. I will explain it to you, so no worries. Sometimes you find things like this. It's like, wow, this is interesting. Wow. So what I want to tell you is that today we're going to take a look at something called code smells. Code smells, as defined by some people, are some kind of the first step into finding something that is poorly designed or poorly implemented. It's like the symptoms of something being poorly designed. I like to call it like the underlying problem. Code smells kind of tells you that there's something else wrong. And that's just a small consequence of it. So to put it more like in a full quote, I would say what you consider wrong is usually the consequence of something intrinsically wrong in the system. And I like this quote because I think it applies to other things. So today we're going to make an analogy with code smells. Today we're going to think of a cold. When you're kind of sick with the flu, the whole thing, winter. Well, you might consider this is wrong, but the truth is that there is something intrinsically wrong with this. There's an underlying problem here. It's not the cold itself, because you may take pills and get better. But the problem is your immune system, which is not ready to kind of face the different bacteria and viruses around it. You need to fix that problem, not necessarily this one, because if you fix that one, you will fix the rest. It's the same with code. So have this in mind. So sometimes you might also realize that the underlying problem of any code smell defined is actually something even bigger. Perhaps your immune system is not that good because you haven't been eating vegetables. And perhaps you haven't been eating vegetables because you're always in a rush. You're always late. And perhaps you're always late because you're a bad planner. So in code, the same thing applies. You need to kind of understand what's the underlying problem behind any code errors or bad practices you find out there. And this is what we're going to do today. Today, I'm going to show you some bad practices. And we're going to play a game. This game it's not like this one. This is a really nice GIF I found. Do you play Jenga, right? Have people play Jenga here? Please raise up your hand. Yeah, nice. Yes, it's a really drinking game, cool drinking game. Or solitary, but it's not like this either. It's called Can You Find the Underlying Problem game. It's a game in which you are going to participate of this. You're going to interactively answer what's the underlying problem of some code smells I'm going to present to you. And for example, I would show something like this, and you're going to answer, like, what's the code? Like, we clearly know that the error, it's something around here, right? It's like there's many dots. And this is not Morse code. This is JavaScript. So what's the problem behind it? Who is responsible for this? So you're going to answer, but you're not going to answer one by one. You're going to vote. I'm going to give you two choices, and you're going to vote by either raising up your hand like this, or raising up your hand like a fist. It's one choice or another. Let's make a quick test. Who prefer dogs? Raise up your hands like this right now. And who prefer cats? Yeah, nice. So I see more fists, because of course, cats are much better. Sorry. Yeah, they're much better. In any case, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. And let's get started. Let's do a test run for this one. This is our code smell. The question is, what's the problem behind it? Is it poor TypeScript configuration, or is it poor folder structure? Raise up your hands. If you don't have an answer, it's completely fine. I see some people raising their fist. It could be both. That's why you have two hands. Yeah, you can do that as well. Yeah. Well, the truth is that sometimes when you have a big project, you have a lot of folders, and sometimes it's just very difficult to keep your folders in sync, flat, nested, in a good, appropriate way. But having a TypeScript good configuration is not something you can skip. You should skip. It's actually something you should do. So instead, you could do something like TypeScript path mappings that will allow you to kind of set an absolute path for your imports. So the next time you need to import a file, it will actually look like this. So yeah, this is number one. I hope you like it. And we're going to see 10 more. So nine more. Number 9. Raise up your hand, whichever way you like. Who knows this person? Does anyone recognize this man over here? Okay, 2 people. Nice. So it turns out that this guy, just a random guy, but he created JavaScript. Right? So now you kind of recognize him. What's his name again? Brendan Eich. Yeah. So this is our very next code smell. You see something like this, and you're like, wow, this is interesting. What is the actual problem? What's the underlying problem here? And let's take a look at the 2 different options. Get ready to vote. Poor TypeScript linters, poor TypeScript knowledge. Raise up your hand now. Let's see. I see a few fists. Well, poor TypeScript knowledge. Yeah. Poor TypeScript linter. Okay. Kier, what do you think?
I'm talking to Minko. I don't know what the question is.
Yeah, sure. So it turns out that if you're in a team where you have senior, mid, and junior developers, seeing this, it could happen. It could happen to you by writing a typo. You just happen to put 2 equals instead of 3 equals. That's completely normal. What is not normal is not having the linters that actually fix it for yourself. If the machine can do the job, why do you have to do it as a human? So the good thing is that this should actually look like this, and linters, TypeScript linters, can actually fix it right away, automatically, or sometimes they just bother you by saying that. So the actual answer is like, you should have your linters that will fix this and avoid this to happen. Next question, next code smell. This is related to Angular. So what happens if you see something like this? Pay close attention. Perhaps some of you have never seen anything like this, and that's completely fine as well. I'm going to explain it in a second. But for those of you who might have played around with property binding, what kind of error is this? What's the underlying problem? Poor HTML linters or poor change detection understanding? I see. Yeah. There's only 3 palms. Okay, interesting. Kier, come on. Good one. So the answer is poor change detection understanding. No, let me make a parenthesis here. You might as well be right. This might as well be a poor HTML linters, right? So it's not absolute complete wrong. So bear that in mind. I'm just giving my opinion on how it should be done. But what's the reason for this? Let me tell you. It turns out that when you are interested in passing a raw string to a property binding such as value, so that the input provides shows this string, you can do it just like this. You don't need a property binding at all, because the actual string is not going to change. Therefore, you don't need the property binding going through this change detection, where it kind of constantly checks if the information has changed or not. So in such cases, you might as well just do it like this, and it's fine. It's only when you have a variable or something else like a function that makes sense doing it like this. So that's the reason it's more poor change detection. Now, linters wouldn't make sense if there were linters today that could avoid refrain us from doing that. But as to my understanding, there's no linters doing that, so that's the reason for it. Let's go to the number 7. So it turns out that while I was doing this presentation, I also wanted to gather the opinion of experienced Angular developers all over. And I asked a lot of people, and it's like, thanks. I asked a lot of people, like, hey, what do you think is this code smell you see often in your code bases? And Oti from AG Nigeria, she reached out to me and said, Juan, when I'm reviewing code bases on Angular, this is what I find very often. I know the lining is not helping us very much. Perhaps if I press this button. So you may be thinking, okay, what's running this? This looks fine to me. There's not actually wrong with this, or is it? So if you don't know, it's fine. I'm going to explain it as well in a second. But if you happen to know what's going on here, please vote. What is poor performance strategy, poor routing names? Please answer if you have an answer. It's fine if you don't. No problem. Okay. I see 2 fists. So it's like a 5% fist. 99, 95% poor performance strategy. So the actual answer is poor performance strategy. And you might be wondering why. Well, the names, they are arguable. Yeah, perhaps they're bad named. Could be. But the actual thing that's going on here is that they are not lazy loading anything. And the real way this should look like is like this. Because what's happening is that the whole Angular application is being loaded on the first screen. And that's just making your application much slower. So you want to kind of lazy load something from time to time. So Oti told me, hey, I see code bases where nobody's lazy loading anything. So you have to take this into consideration. So far, so good. It's English too fast. I usually speak too fast, but is it good? Is it all right? Nice. Good. All right. Perfect. So number 6, Wasim. He's a developer advocate in Microsoft. Actually, he works with Max. And then he gave me one very interesting. He's a great contributor to Angular. And he told me, Juan, sometimes I'm reviewing code bases, and I found something quite interesting in the shared module. The shared module, so you know, it's a module where you put shared stuff across the different modules of your application. And he told me, Juan, sometimes I see this. And again, you might be wondering, but what's running here? This looks fine. Oh, I forgot the GIF. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, there you are. Yeah, you might be wondering, like, okay, this share module looks fine to me. Well, what could be running here? It's everything seems okay. Well, the truth, I'm not going to tell it to you because I'm going to give you the opportunity to vote for 100 Ravels. Which is the answer? Shared modules shouldn't have services. Poor single responsibility principle. What's the answer? No, if you don't know, it's okay. You don't have to provide an answer. It's just optional. Okay, see, like 20% versus 80%. Okay, this is getting interesting. 70% versus 30%. 70% people say poor single responsibility, and the other 30% say the shared services shouldn't have services. The truth is that it's a single responsibility principle problem. So while it's true that shared services shouldn't have services because it's not very common, it could be the case. It could be the case that you don't need a singleton, you need a different instance every time, so you import share module in different modules, and then you have it. And that could be a case. But if I see a share module that looks like this, I say like, oh, fuck. Or even bigger. Sorry, I shouldn't, sir. You can, sorry. You say like, oh, wow. Oh my God. Yeah, right. It should be actually smaller, perhaps, and it should be something like this. This is how a share module ideally would look like. So you see, it's more concise, it's shorter, it has less thing in it, it's important less stuff, because every single module has its own responsibility, and instead share module is just in charge of something particularly. It's not having a lot of stuff altogether. So what Wasim pretty much told me is, he said, Juan, the share module is where people put everything that doesn't belong anywhere else, and it just gets so big that at some point something happened to him. When he was testing the Angular application, every component or every module would import the shared module, which would make the application super heavy, making it 15 minutes to test. After he broke down the shared module, it was much slower, much faster. So take this into account. Don't make the shared module such a big thing. Number 5. We only have 5 minutes more, so is it okay for you if I take an extra 4 minutes to finish the whole presentation? Yes, good. Nice, thank you. So this is Susie. Susie is going to give us a TypeScript code smell that she's actually an ex-Googler, and I think she worked in Google for like 10 years or so, and she worked with AngularJS and perhaps a little bit with Angular. And then Susie told me, hey, you know what? When I'm reviewing code bases, there's this code smell that everybody does, or a lot of people usually does, and it's this one. Take a look. What's going on here? So this might look right to you as well. You say like, yeah, but this doesn't look weird. I mean, it's consistent. It's even ordered by the line weight. It's beautiful. Yeah, well, the truth is that, let's take a look at the polls. Again, for 1,000 rubles, what's the answer? Poor single responsibility principle mixing different types of services. Please answer now. Okay, I see a couple of fists. It's like 40% versus 50%, 60%. Yeah. It's nice. Okay. So apparently, the truth is that when you have a component, any component, this one in particular is the app component, you could end up actually mixing different types of services. That's not actually a bad pattern. That's normal. You sometimes need something like, for example, the router service or the breakpoint observer to make layout things. That's completely normal to have different types of services. What it's not normal is to have a component that has too many services, because this is probably too much. Of course, this depends on the type of application, of course. But again, this is perhaps a lot for a component. Again, a code smell doesn't imply that something wrong, but it just gives you a tip that perhaps there is something wrong. And this is the thing. So what I would suggest is that you strip away all the services that can be stripped away for any component. So you make sure you have at least 5 or 4. That should be enough, or 6 perhaps, but don't add just too many unless you have a very good reason for it. Number 4, TypeScript. This is interesting. Let's go for it. You see this, and then you say like, okay, there's something wrong here, but what is it? This is a square function, so you just give you a square. So mathematically speaking, it's correct. But TypeScriptly speaking, it's not correct. What's going on here? Try to think for a second. What's the code smell in this function? Well, it turns out, what? Perhaps. The truth is that there are 2 chances. Lack of a type coverage report or lack of a typing culture. What could be the answer? If you don't know, it's all right. If you want to give it a try, just raise up. Okay, we have kind of 50-50. Oh, no. It's going for the fist, lack of typing culture. Okay, a couple of people said lack of a type coverage report. So let's put it this way. If you have a type coverage report, which means, translate to, for the people who have never seen anything like this, it's a kind of a file, an HTML file sometimes, that shows how many types you have in your applications. Sometimes you have 90% of types, 20% of types, just like unit tests, right? You can add this to your project, but still be 0%. So you wouldn't solve the problem. You need a typing culture. This is the actual answer. A typing culture is like an engineering team that actually enforces types. Perhaps you can do it with linters and stuff like that, but it's more of a culture. Say like, hey, we need to put types in functions, variables, arguments, all over. This is our culture, and this is the way we do it. So this is more important than the type coverage report. So this is how it would look like after you have fixed it. All right, number 3, the top 3 code smells all over. This is Carlos Rosso, friend from Colombia. And he's an engineer at TopTal, and he brings a RxJS code smell. So this is how it looks like. Take a closer look. I know it's not that big. People in the back might have issues. Oh, no, because you have TVs, so you can see it, right? Yeah, of course. Yeah, it looks great. Yeah, you have to. I mean, yeah, it's just perfect. Great venue. So there's something wrong here, but what could that be? I mean, it has types, so perhaps that's not it. Let's take a look. 2 possible options: lack of extensibility, lack of RxJS knowledge. What? Wow, too many fists. Lack of RxJS knowledge. You're very mean. I mean, if you tell someone, hey, you don't know RxJS, the fuck? No. But I like Maxime. Maxime's on my side. He said lack of extensibility. Maxime, why is this lack of extensibility?
I just feel this.
Gut feeling, for sure. That's how we code, right? Gut feeling. In any way, the thing is that the real answer is the same as I said before. You may be in a team where you have junior developers. Well, no, that's not actually a good argument. Yeah, this might be lack of RxJS knowledge, but the truth is that at the end, the ultimate underlying problem is lack of extensibility. This actually works. There could be a reason to do this, even if you know RxJS pretty well. If you're a master of RxJS, this could be fine. But the thing is that the underlying problem of this is lack of extensibility. If tomorrow you need to add an operator in the middle, if you need to kind of do change for switch map to merge map or do concat map or map the information, a lot of that with operators, then this is not convenient. What it's convenient to do if you need more extensibility in your code is to actually use the pipe operator. So the pipe operator will allow you to, for example, switch map two different streams and then do whatever you want with it. So it's just a small difference, but then Carlos said this is not a good practice. And then a lot of people say it as well. So rather strive to use pipes instead of subscribing inside of subscription. That's one thing. Number two, and we are about to finish to go with Maxine. Maxine is the next one, right? Yeah. Majid. Majid is for Norway, I guess, and he is one of the co-organizers of NG Vikings and is a really good friend of Max as well. He gave out Angular code smell that it's like this one. Let's see if you can catch it. This is an interesting one. Okay, for a pair of socks, can anybody raise up your hand and say like, hey, there's something wrong? Ooh, anybody would like to give it a try? Yes, over there in the back. Yes, I'll just give you the mic.
You probably should use remove this common model and put it in the shared model and import it everywhere. And this way you will, I believe, get some error.
But you mean the common module, right? Yeah. Close, but not really. But it was close. It was close, but not really. I'll explain the answer in a second. Anyone else want to give it a try over here?
The problem is here with core model, because core model can be only in app model and can't import in other models in application.
What's your name? Clement. It's correct, Clement. Here's your socks. Congratulations. Please an applause to him. Yes. So the truth is that core module, just to summarize it super quick, it's a special module that was aimed to be imported only once in the app module. Therefore, all the services you have in core module become singletons. That is that you only have one instance for the whole application. Once you import it several times, you're breaking the whole singleton pattern, and then you're creating new instances every time. So this is a very big code smells. Pre-implementation of singletons, repeated code is not the repeated code. Perhaps like the gentleman back there was kind of suggesting, it's more of a in singletons issue with core module. Okay, that's how you fix it with black square. Let's just move on the number one and last one. So this is with Angular, and this is my favorite. Every time I go to a company, I say, hey, we're doing things wrong. This is not how we should be doing things. And you know what? Because this is what I see.
Firebase, nothing can be wrong here.
NG Firebase, yeah, true. What is wrong with this? Sorry, Maxine, I already give you an opportunity. I don't have socks. Would you still like to participate? Yes?
Old folder structure.
Okay.
Currently some different.
What would you suggest will be the new folder structure?
New folder structure, all components contains pipes, services, directives inside, or have shared folder for some reusable components.
Yeah, I like that. What's your name? Dimitri. I think Dimitri is right. I think certainly the problem here is the folder structure. So congratulations for answering correctly. Let's give it an applause. Yeah, for sure. Dimitri, bravo. Well, what I see here is one of these two problems: poor maintainability or poor separation of concerns. I would like to sense what you think. Please raise up your hand in both, despite what Dimitri just said. Any other different separation of concerns, poor maintainability? I think it's both. Yes, you got it. It's both. The real way which this should look like is this: a domain-driven design, where you have modules that actually encapsulate the different scenarios of an actor, of a given actor, such as, for example, about us, contact, footer, sign up. Well, footer perhaps not, but sign up, register, dashboard, you name it, where you have a whole set of artifacts that are related and that are the responsible for a given view. So, for example, if I tell Dimitri, hey, Dimitri, you know what? In my application, I have a bug, and it's in the dashboard. So if I show him this, he will have no idea where to search for it. Or if I tell him there's a problem with the header, he will not know, perhaps look in the components, but it might as well be the pipe. Whereas if I tell him this, he will certainly go to the header right away and fix it, because technically the problem will reside there. This is what I would suggest for big code bases. Perhaps for small code bases, the previous approach makes sense, but for big code bases, I don't think it does as much. Anyway, I think this is it. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
We have time for one question. If anybody wants to ask, you'll have to speak in the microphone. Anybody has one question? No? Thanks a lot, Juan, one more time. And the presentation should be, I think I sent it to you.
Okay.
So,
Let's see. In Twitter?
yep. Watch out for Juan's messages. Oh, he unplugged it. Never mind. Smart Juan.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything.
Okay, we're running out of internet.
We have 30 minutes.
Yeah. I did it 25. But yeah, 33 is good, yeah.
Should I think I'd run out of data? Can you give me? Here you are. Is this one right?
Yeah. Oh. And please welcome Maxim Salnikov.
Hello, good evening, developers. I feel myself a bit weird by speaking in English for the core audience who is Russian speaking. By the way, just a question: is anybody in the house who is not Russian speaking except Juan? Yeah, just a question. It will not affect anything. Okay. Anyway, if we have this idea to continue in English, absolutely no problem. So let's do it. So great to be here. I see many folks I know from previous conferences, from previous events and communities. You are lucky people to have such vibrant communities, Angular community here in Moscow, and your Telegram channel dedicated to Angular is just something amazing. I can tell that when I share my screen during some calls, folks always ask me, so on this Telegram icon you have some thousands of unread messages. What is it? And I tell, oh, it's just super active channel of Angular in Russian. So you really rock, folks. Initial idea for my presentation was to introduce Angular progressive web apps. But last couple of months, so many great things happened in PWA world in general. So I decided to add this section. So I removed lots of stuff related to Angular, but no worries. I will share the link to, say, full technical version of this slide deck. I believe I even have the one in Russian in the comments to this meetup event. And yeah, let's dedicate more time to PWA. Maybe 50-50. We'll see. Yeah, a couple of words about me. I'm also a GDE in Angular and web tech. I organize lots of communities related to web and mobile development. So I run similar activity in Oslo, in Norway, where I live last 8 years. I run NG Vikings conference for Nordics, fully dedicated to Angular, as you can imagine. And this is my Twitter. I tweet almost exclusively about web platform, PWA, Angular, community thingies. And now, HTML tag, shameless promo. I helped my friends in Samara to run a conference called 404 Fest. Maybe you heard about this one. It will happen in mid-September, Saturday and Sunday. And I'm taking care of front-end and back-end track there. So welcome to Samara. This will be huge, interesting event for 2,000 people. Yeah, 404fest.ru. Now, end of shameless promotion. Let's start. What is PWA at all? Just a couple of sentences. I believe every one of you here heard about this. I believe majority of you maybe tried something practical with this. In a super simple words, we use all the power of APIs exposed by the browsers to deliver the best possible user experience in our projects. Plus, bonus, we have everything that running pretty much everywhere, cross-platform. Isn't it a dream of every developer? Yes, PWA works everywhere and works everywhere natively. You see, it's very bold and strong statement, right? But there is an asterisk, like always in statements like this. Everywhere, but not everything. Okay, we are front-end developers, right? We know the stuff. So who can tell me what do we do if we are not sure if we can use this or that like feature of JavaScript or this or that API in this particular browser? What's the name of say concept we constantly use in front-end development? Suffering. More options. Well, it falls back to some extent, and it's maybe we can have polyfills, but I expected to hear something like progressive enhancement, right? So we can always check if this feature is there, then we can go for this. If not, it depends. If you really need it, we can polyfill it. If not, well, it's progressive enhancement, right? Yes, so we are used to this, so we know how that works, and it's really not a big deal if some, I don't know, cutting-edge API is not available in this browser on this operating system. Super briefly about what does it really bring to our dear customers. First, yes, everything is about offline readiness and optimizing networking. Yes, I believe you heard about PWA exactly in this context. This is like very start of the whole idea. Also, we can bring some extra features to bother and maybe delight or inform, depends, our users, customers with push notifications, which were not available on the web in its current form, and some other cool things. And Alexei, welcome. And here is the organizer of Angular Moscow, Alexei Okremenko. Please give a round of applause. Front row is for you, man. Join us. I don't even know why did we start without Alexei. Yeah, let's go on. I really want to focus a bit on these other cool things that came to at least some browsers last couple of months. And yeah, after all, to wrap all our set of HTML, JavaScript, CSS files to something that we can ever call application, of course, we need to provide at least name and icon, right? And it's all done by JSON file following web app manifest specification. But let's have a look on this. There is Excel spreadsheet available for us, for developers. It's public, so it's not a secret, and it's about the plans on shipping this or that API. Majority of them are related to some form of hardware features support, but not everything. I think I did mistake by not taking the date, approximate date of when this or that will be shipped or planned to be shipped, but yeah, we can approximate. This is approximately Chrome 76. This is approximately Chrome 77, 78, and the year 2020 starts approximately here. So in this list, 90 plus APIs, and who can tell me the name of this project? It's like inside Google, but actually it's public. The name of the project dedicated to latest and greatest APIs, which will be shipped somewhere to the browsers. Yes, you are right. It's called Project Fugu, and this is a short URL for this file. Of course, there is no guarantee that this will be shipped and when. But still, it's very interesting, and I love this openness of folks who develop Chromium. Yeah, it deserves some love from developer community. No worries about all these links. As I mentioned, it's online version of this slide deck. It's the same on slides.com, like Juan did, and this is my like default option for the presentation. So everything will be shared for you. You will not miss any single link. Some of these APIs which were announced from June to August, Beijing one. So actually, when I present about PWA, I take my mobile device, it's charging now, and say there is nothing to invent, at least now. Let's just make web to catch up with what we have in mobile native code. For example, this Beijing, it's about, for example, number of unread messages. We all know how that works on native applications, on native mobile applications and native desktop applications. Why not to have the same in our web apps? Really, why not? And now it's in Origin trial. Fun fact, it works currently on Windows and Mac operating systems, but not on Android for some technical reasons. Just imagine that like folks from Chromium team, like basically from Google mainly, they started some new API with support on different operating system. That really shows the say attitude to this idea. So don't think about PWA, but like about something. Oh, it's only for Chrome, only for from Googlers and supported only by Google. No, and no. It's really cross browser thing now. Next one, contact picker. Really, why not to give an access to our contact book, our address book, straight from our JavaScript code without need to transpile, to wrap, to ship some extra code, to wrap everything to native, to push our projects and apps to some form of store, really. And now, this one is only available on Android, as I remember, and you see it's really fresh, so it's from this month actually, explainer itself. Then really scary one, I believe this was one of the reasons to call the project Fugu. You know that Fugu is a dangerous fish. If you cook it wrong, you eat it and you die. And file system, and it's full access, maybe except some system protected folders. Browsers decide which folders to protect, but in general, it opens really many opportunities for completely new types of front-end projects, like client-side front-end projects, editors of any type, like text, graphical, whatever. You have now full access to read, write, update files. Actually, this is a new name for older proposal called Writable Files API. I believe it's a way better name now, but still I'm not quite sure about having native prefix here is a proper idea. Maybe file system API sounds too generic, I don't know. Native file system. It's the explainer again from August. And one of the latest is periodic background sync API. It's available in Origin trial in Chrome Canary. First, it's not about some scheduling inside your browser, and it works only when we are connected to the network. And it's browser who is taking the final decision on run this sync or not. Again, really nothing to invent here. We all know that native mobile applications, they have the possibility to reach out to network in the background, of course, if we give corresponding permission, but we know that some applications, they can download fresh data and they can be updated in background themselves. So it brings the same opportunity to web, like client side in particular, to the installed web applications. About installation, as you remember, I mentioned that it works everywhere, and I believe this list, it's a screenshot from a tweet of my friend Maximilian Viertman, who is like true expert in pretty much everything about progressive web apps. So he's gathering all the information very scrupulously, and he's following all the latest updates, especially on iOS area. There are some issues with this, but still. Yeah, I believe the list of operating systems is quite good, and this is the list where your JavaScript-driven application will run as a native one, as a first-class citizen of corresponding operating system. Really, no more need for any kind of wrappers. Let's say exactly, no need for Electron, no need for React Native, no need for NativeScript, Cordova, PhoneGap, etc., etc., etc. Just ship your JavaScript code. That's it. And now my question to you folks, and it's the open question. What else do we need to get at least feature parity on web and native code? Not only mobile. We can take as an example, I don't know, something.exe on Windows and something with this execution attribute on Linux. Really, let's think all together. What else do we need to have web as true application platform? So yeah, one of my other sessions is about web as application platform, and the idea is not new, right? And there is a lack of functionality, and we have really great chance to fix everything by just giving feedback, by testing all these latest and greatest APIs. And yeah, if we need something else to get at least feature parity, let's raise an alarm. Let's write articles about this. Let's test everything. And web has really great chance to become this universal application platform. And web, of course, many years ago, web was not invented for this. You remember? Web was invented as like medium to show some, say, text documents with pictures which are hyperlinked to each other. No, nothing else. But we all see where we now. Angular. We are at Angular meetup, right? Now it's time to mention this framework. Of course, like any other modern framework, Angular loves and embraces and adopts this idea. Literally every framework you mentioned has some native or third-party tools to deliver progressive web apps functionality. Lots of options, well, at least 3. We can do everything by our hands, like like always. It's just a JavaScript code after all, right? We can use built-in functionality called Angular Service Worker. Or we can go for some third-party libraries. And to be honest, I don't know good competitors to Workbox at the moment. If you know, please share this information with me. It's good and bad, right? So we have a form of industry standard in automating everything related to, say, at least networking in PWA universe. But of course, it brings us lack of competition, right? We really need something else to, I don't know, stimulate Workbox maintainers and supporters to work even better, but they do really great jobs. So nothing to complain, to be honest. Let's define what do we really mean by PWA, right? If we just add the service worker with and add offline functionality to our application, can we call this a progressive web application? Most likely not. Because, you know, PWA actually, this is a bit marketing-ish term for all this latest and greatest stuff happening with web, but still it has some formal check marks to follow. And these are like 4, say, main ones. Let's do not pay too much attention to last 2. I believe this is just default way we build and host our applications, right? So who is building slow desktop only application? Nobody. Oh, sorry. no offense. If yes. HTTPS also is a form of good manner on the web. Web app manifest, as I mentioned, it not very like programming-ish thingy. It's more or less standard you follow to build your JSON file with name and some other meta information. So application shell, of course, is the most interesting part. We'll not go into the details because this is very like condensed and short version of the session. But still, just as a refresher for you, it's approximate service worker idea. So what is service worker? This is JavaScript file, JavaScript code, right? Or set of files. There is a way to modularize this. And it works like a gateway between your application and the all outer world. And this gateway intercepts some events from the application, some intercepts from the cloud itself, this is internet, right? And it's about push notifications, of course. And operating system or browser, depends, can also send some events to service worker. So in the big picture, it's event-driven worker, right? Enough. I believe it was the shortest ever intro to service workers, right? But it's not that young API, to be honest. So service worker API appeared way before term PWA came to the game. So yes, and PWA is, I believe, more than 4 years old idea. So let's do not run one more getting started session. In big picture, how does the code look inside service worker? We catch events. So this is very like schematic code, right? Don't expect super deep dive. We catch events and we write some code inside. And the code inside is quite explicit. So we literally, in very imperative way, say, take this file, put into the cache, try to get to the network. If it's there, put into the cache. If not, try to extract from cache, all that stuff. So we have to create all this logic manually. And it causes lots of possible problems, edge cases. If you try to write, say, more or less production-ready service worker yourself, completely from scratch, I promise you will become way better programmer. You will learn about HTTP protocol and its modes a lot, and but this will take time. And most likely, first versions of your progressive web applications will send your app to offline in a bad sense. You mean? You know what I mean? This will not work in offline. This will not work even online. It might happen, and Yes, I'm not stopping you from writing your service worker, of course. I encourage you to try, but this is just a warning about this will take some time. And same on serving, right? We catch another event and provide full logic what to do on this event. If we requested for logo.png from our application, what will happen next? Should we go to the network? Should we go to the cache? Should we provide fallbacks? So we are saying about some form of strategies, right? We can code everything manually, but I will not even read all these possible things that might happen with your application. Again, HTTP protocol is not the simplest one, and you have to provide all the possible fallbacks to create something that more or less ready for real life use cases. You can write service worker like training one quite fast, following lots of guides you find on the internet, but to get to the real life, you'll need some say mastership to get in writing. So yes, we'll not focus on that so much. Of course, we can write our own workbox, right? But great responsibility. We have tools, luckily, and these two will help us with a lot of things. It allows us to automate pretty much everything and take care of edge cases. And I encourage you to check the source of this tool. So if we use some module, package, library, whatever, I don't know, close to 100% of them are open sourced. And if you like some ideas in this functionality, it's always a great idea to go and check how that's implemented in the code. And again, you will become a better developer by just reading other code. Angular Service Worker, it's all about automation. So it's native tool for Angular framework. It's delivered by Angular team. And by the way, Minko is taking serious part in development and support of this great module. We have all the power of Angular to use. Schematics, CLI, and Angular Service Worker itself. One-liner to start, literally, nothing to add. Schematics, and it does all the dirty job by creating files, updating files, everything we want to avoid to do manually, right? All this boring job. Then Angular CLI takes control when we build it, and using production mode is important, otherwise this will not just work. And serve. We have a great command in Angular CLI called ngserve, right? Looks good? Not really. ngserve will not help us in running and debugging service workers. It's by design because architecturally, what ngserve does, it's too smart. It spins up this in-memory web server. It optimizes everything like crazy to give us as fast developer experience as possible, right? Because it's exclusively for testing stuff. But idea of progressive BAP is completely different. It's about being very conservative, caching stuff. So they two don't work together well, or don't work together completely. So instead of ngserve, use any other way to serve your application, any static web server of your choice. So just don't forget that if you try to use ng for this, you will fail. And now we are completely safe to start the application in our browser, check that our storage is full, and we can switch to offline, hit reload, magic. Still works. So we just got, by one-liner, we got fully working offline version of the application, so we can say farewell to offline Dino, just with one line. Super fast, what's happened on this scaffold stage, we got some files created by schematics. Then when we started build, we got a couple more files in our dist folder, and actually configuration file was, say, compiled to another configuration file, one JSON to another one, and the rest is taken care of this ngsw worker.js, which is actually service worker, by Angular team, it means that we don't have to write our own one, right? Really cool. And of course, to connect all this awesomeness to our application, a couple of files were also updated. On index.html, there is a reference to web manifest appeared, and there is service worker registration code in application module. Yep. So by one-liner, we are covered at least for offline mode. And I'm not going to convert this session to documentation about how to configure everything. Just one example how that looks in NGSW config JSON. There are some smart defaults. So this, you will see this right after this schematic. So it tries its best to say prognose which files we might want to have in application shell, which means we might want to pre-cache on the application start. And of course, you are free to edit everything. Workbox. Completely different idea. So first, it's equipped with a really cool set of features, like going out of the box. And it's all module-based, plugin-based, so super simple to mix everything up. But the core advantage is we have full control on our own service worker. So if in case of NGSW, which is shortening for Angular Service Worker, the service worker file itself shipped as a library, so we don't have to touch this at all. Here we have full control. At least 3 working modes for the moment. It's quite trendy nowadays that every small tool has its own CLI. I'm not a big fan of this idea, just to pollute global scope with more and more CLIs. Webpack plugin, maybe it's also not super smart, because I don't want to eject Angular CLI just to expose Webpack configuration file, just to edit some stuff from Workbox. So Node module is the best option for Angular applications. And to start, you only need to install package called Workbox build, and we'll need this only on development stage, so we can safely put it into developer dependency, not runtime. A piece of code on this slide just to show that we have to provide some Node.js code to merge what Workbox can give us with our, say, build flow. The most important here is configuration, and on the next slide you will see how that looks. Pretty same, right? Like we have in NGSW config JSON. So we also provide some patterns of the files we want to have in application shell, right? But the core difference is here. We have our source service worker, which we are making, and we can add whatever handlers we want from whatever APIs we need, right? And then service worker itself might look like this. This inject manifest method from the previous slide, from this Node.js code, is doing nothing else but injecting some JavaScript object to this file. So this is text file operation to, say, enrich service worker with some real application data. And yeah, of course, it contains the list of the files we want to have in application shell, plus their revisions to manage the versions. So no magic at all. Please be aware, it's the code for Workbox version 4, which is stable now, but in, I believe, in autumn, maybe closer to Chrome Developer Summit, it's like a normal milestone, they will switch to Workbox 5, which is a completely different story. Well, not completely different in terms of API, but completely different inside. So it's written in TypeScript, for example. And this will be slightly changed. So instead of putting this empty array here, you'll just put some specially named variable. Everything in documentation. Now it's in beta 0 or beta 1, if I remember correctly. It's under active development, Workbox 5. Yes, and last, you just add this script to your build flow. You created your application, you run this injection of manifest just to enrich Workbox service worker, not Workbox, but our service worker driven by Workbox, by the data about our assets. I don't know, our HTML files, JavaScript bundles, CSS, whatever, to achieve absolutely the same behavior. When on the first load, everything we listed in this pattern will be pre-cached, and then you can safely go offline, hit refresh, magic, your application is working again. So in big picture, Angular Service Worker, really super easy to start. It's as something from Angular family, of course, integration as smooth and as easy as possible, as delightful as possible, I say. Defaults scaffolded for you by schematics. I believe they will work for 90% of the project without any changes. On the Workbox, still not big problem to create this build module, and the differentiator is we have full control on our own service worker. On the full version of this slide deck, I go into details in some other features. A link will be available for you. I believe there are even some recordings on YouTube. Maybe even in Russian. I don't remember exactly. So you'll get all this information. No worries. So here I listed everything super briefly. Our application is evolving, right? And we have to manage versions of our app. And of course, we don't want to cache something for the very first time and then show this version every other time, right? And most likely, we want to inform users somehow about the version was updated. Both frameworks, not frameworks, of course, both say options give us quite convenient, say, hooks or handlers to manage this. It was all about application shell caching, like about caching of the app assets itself, right? But of course, we consume APIs in majority of our application. We consume some external CDNs during its work life cycle. This is why we need runtime caching, and it also can be seriously optimized by service workers. Again, both options are here, and here I put many more check marks because there are many more strategies inside the Workbox, and they are way more flexible, I'd say. Completely undocumented feature, but Angular Service Worker gives us a really convenient way to work with push notifications. We just follow some simple convention on our server side. Server side is must-have option in this flow, and Workbox is actually, Workbox is nothing about nothing except networking. So push notifications is not about work with cache, work with network. This is why it's just out of its scope completely. Plus, as a nice option, schematics will generate default web app manifest for you. Again, it's just text file, right? Please don't forget to change the name and the brand colors and icons after you generated it by schematics. Again, completely out of Workbox scope. And you might say, oh, maybe I have to go for NGSW all the time since it's equipped with more interesting features. It could be a good start. It could be a good start for you to just say, test the flavor of Angular progressive web apps. But here is the differentiator. If you go for NGSW, Angular Service Worker, you are very strictly limited to what its developers created and exposed for you in terms of features, right? So, because we don't touch the Service Worker itself. There are some hackish ways to, say, in a very rude way to extend it, but yeah, of course it's not like future-proof, right? But in case of Workbox, we take full control over service worker file. This is why all this, for example, latest and greatest APIs I mentioned in the very beginning, most likely you can not use them if you go for NGSW. In case of Workbox, no problems at all. Summary. NGSW, super easy to start, well integrated. Majority of features you will get without any single line of code, maybe just editing some configuration. if you need to write some code, for example, to catch events about app updates or to catch some useful push notifications thingies, you write everything in very, very Angular way. You use observables, use dependency injection, use all these tools you know well, right? After all, it's sort of just add and configure and get what Angular team decided to include in this functionality, which is absolutely cool for, say, quick start. And maybe for some simple projects, if you just need to create something that you can call progressive web app, that something that works offline, something that you can install on any device, that's it. Workbox, different idea. First, maybe it could be very, very useful for you that all the experience you have with Workbox, completely framework agnostic. So you can use the same ideas, same code, same tooling for any framework or frameworkless at all. This is a nice option. Initial set of functionality exposed by this library way richer. And you can configure this up to tiny details because you can even write your code as a configuration. If you can say inject your code into deep internals of Workbox if needed, and you can keep full power of every single upcoming feature, every single upcoming say handler in your service worker. This is why will take some time for you to set this up. You remember this quite simple Node.js script code, but get what you want really. Couple of useful links for you. PWA Slack, international community I started a couple of years ago. Now it's more than 2,000 developers, including folks from Workbox, folks from Chrome, folks from browsers. And if you wish to read everything in Russian, there is a Telegram channel. I believe we are like close to 300 people, so it's not huge. Please join us, please join this discussion. Thank you very much. Спасибо огромное, друзья.
Anybody has one question for Max?
Only one. Yeah, you can always catch me later.
You have to speak in the microphone.
Which famous company use this application?
Very good question. I will not. Let's say I don't want to
we are going to take questions in advance because the quality is not very great for the connection. So go to this URL and then ask your questions. You can also vote for questions which you like, and then they will go to the top. And then Minko will also see this page. And I'll give you like a few more minutes while we're going to connect. Now is the time for questions.
So, hello, do you hear me by any chance?
I forgot.
Hear you live.
I forgot the mic, but yes, we can hear you. We're trying to figure out, do you see the list of the questions?
Yes.
Okay, so we're trying to figure out how to get it on the screen for us, and then we can start.
Okay. And yeah, I'll have to change my conference in 13 minutes.
Okay.
So I'll do a quick run to the fifth floor.
Cool. This seems good enough. We had our first question from Bad.js, and the question is like, why did Angular team deprecate web worker support?
Yes, so let me go back to the question screen. So web workers were a good experiment. They were always an experimental API, and we tried to improve the performance of, so let me just give you some background before that. We try to improve the performance of, the runtime performance of Angular apps by extracting the heavy calculations, pretty much by running your entire application in a web worker and running just the rendering instructions in the main UI thread. And this seemed like a good idea originally. In the same time, it introduces a lot of complexity to the framework. And this message serialization, this constant message serialization has its overhead as well. On top of that, there are some other bottlenecks. For example, moving your application to a web worker is actually not going to make it faster. It's going to be still slow. It's just not going to be running in the main UI thread. And it might get trickier to debug it and to figure out the performance issues. We're just trying to make the framework faster right now, and not require you to run heavy, not require to move in all the calculations in a web worker. But at the same time, if you have any heavy computations in your Angular app, we definitely encourage you to use a web worker. We just don't want to run the entire framework in one. So yeah, that's it. We basically think that using a web worker may introduce overhead around serialization, and we don't see huge benefits of using one.
Cool. So here's the next question. Will Ivy render be okay, so everybody can hear Minka well? Everybody understands what's going on? Yeah. Okay, so we can hear you well. The next question is like, will Ivy render be released as a part of Angular 9?
So I have some exciting updates from about an hour ago, actually. We released Angular CLI version 9.00 next 0, and it switched to Ivy by default. So yeah. This is not a stable release yet. This is what is going to be our next release. And so far, we are pretty confident that we'll be able to release Ivy as part of version 9. This is like, unless we face anything that is going to prevent us from releasing Ivy for everyone, which we haven't found such reason yet. But yeah, we're pretty confident that Angular version 9 is going to ship Ivy by default.
Nice. The next question is, what are you most excited about in the future of Angular?
So particularly, I guess this is my personally personal preference. I'm excited about performance, of course, and about Angular tooling. So first, I think that Ivy is going to enable a lot of new exciting features around performance and development tooling, specifically around progressively loading your application. So I don't know how many of you are currently using server-side rendering, for example. With server-side rendering, currently, when you render your application on the server and you transfer the rendered pretty much like HTML on the client, after that, we start one process of loading all the scripts associated with your app. And once we download pretty much the entire application, which is required for bootstrapping this page, we currently completely destroy the DOM that has been gathered from the server and build it from scratch. So this is not very efficient. With Ivy, we will be able to enable progressive rehydration. Rehydration is the process of taking the server-side rendered content, the DOM, which was produced from the server, and after that, attaching, like pretty much adding Angular semantics on top of that, attaching different event listeners and component data. We will be able to make this progressive. This means that we will not destroy what has been already built by the server. We'll just traverse this tree, this data structure, and attach some meta information to that, some metadata. And this is going to be the first step to allow us to implement progressive rehydration. With the progressive rehydration, we will not have to bootstrap the entire application. We can bootstrap just small pieces of the application, which the user is currently interacting with. So for example, if we have a very large web app with a bunch of heavy widgets, once the user starts interacting with one of these widgets, we can bootstrap only this particular piece of the page, delaying downloading the JavaScript for the rest of the application. So this is more advanced level code splitting. It's not code splitting for routing level that we encourage people to use now. This is code splitting for components level for the entire application by default. So this is something that I'm particularly excited about, that Angular and Ivy is going to enable in long term.
Cool. So the next question is, what are your thoughts on Bazel?
Yes. Bazel is a great tool for building very large-scale applications. Again, this is my strictly personal opinion again. I think that if your application grows above certain points and you want to make your build truly incremental between your front end and your back end, Bazel would be a great fit for you. So Bazel is, you can think of it as a build tool. You describe the structure of your application, and based on the instructions that you have given to the build tool, it figures out the most optimal way to compile your assets and to do different processing on top of your source code. And it is extremely efficient at large scale. For example, at Google, we have been using it for 12 years. And we have variety, like an array of different languages here that Bazel knows how to compile, how to work with. So if your applications grow to a certain stage, probably the current state-of-the-art JavaScript tooling is not going to be a great fit for you. You might not be able to build your entire application in memory, for example, because, well, if you have 5 million lines of code app, probably Webpack is not going to be handled that. But on the other hand, we have Bazel, which knows how to do that with persistent disk caching and a few other features that we have been heavily discussing over the past a couple of years, such as remote build execution and remote caching. Yeah, if you have anything more particular that you want to ask me about Bazel, I'll be happy to talk about that. I'm working on Bazel for the past about a year now.
Cool. Next question. Okay, and actually I know exactly who is asking the question. So there are lots of people. Oh, where's Minko? Oh, he's like, uh-oh. Are you with us?
Yes.
We can hear you. Okay, your face is back. Okay, that's good. So
okay.
Lots of people would love to contribute to Angular, but the PR review process is very long. And the question is will the Angular team be more open to new contributors?
Yeah. Currently, we have been in many discussions on how to make the path to get started contributing to the framework easier. So we have two very large monorepos, two important monorepos. Let's call them this way. We have Angular/Angular, where you can find the framework like Angular Core, Angular Router, Forms, and others. And we have the Angular/Angular CLI, where you can contribute to the CLI and all the underlying modules. Currently, around the framework, things are a little bit tough. We're definitely working on improving the getting started contribution story there. We are trying to figure out some infrastructural things. Like we recently introduced Bazel in Angular Labs, and this is still kind of a new approach that we took to migrate from a bunch of gulp scripts to using Bazel. So there are some edges that we want to clean, and we hope that in near future we'll be able to make the thresholds much lower. On the other side, in the Angular CLI, we're trying to move the pull requests as quickly as possible. So I would encourage you to look at the Angular CLI over the next couple of months until we completely figure out the story around Angular Core. We are thinking how to simplify the process there, and we're sorry it is being that complicated right now.
Cool.
And I should change my conference room because they're going to kick me out of this one in a little bit.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break then.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, I'll see you in a little bit.
Oh, I'm getting lots of questions. That's very cool. Everybody knows how to ask questions and how to vote for questions, right? So you basically go to this URL, kirjs.com/Q&A, and then that's where you can do all this stuff. Yeah, so Minka will be back in a few minutes. He's changing conference rooms. That's what we do at Google, because they're always taken. So at Google we solve lots of problems, but this one is really hard, so haven't been solved yet. Oh, and also elevators. Elevators really hard problem. Cool, I'm gonna archive this one. Это стандартные вопросы, всегда задаю.
I don't know now if you see the big face on the screen again, or.
Hey MG, we only see your this picture which says MG, we don't see your face.
Okay. But you hear me, right?
Yes.
We have very oh yeah, start my video. We have very complicated room booking story. That's the third conference room that I booked for Angular Moscow.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, we see your face now, and we're back. We have lots of questions. So the next one, actually, I was a bit confused about that. So you just sent out a tweet, which unfortunately I cannot show on the screen, but it says that in Angular CLI 8.3, the latest version, or whatever, it will be, the build time will be faster due to differential loading. And we were trying to understand how exactly this works, and this is what the question is about. So does it create just one bundle now, or like if it creates two bundles, why is it faster?
Yeah. Yeah, so there is a small improvement that we introduced as part of Angular version 8.3 that we released like hour and 3 minutes ago. So previously we were producing two different builds of the application, which were going through the entire build pipeline, going through calculation by the TypeScript compiler, by the Angular compiler, our build optimizer, and so on and so forth. currently, we do this only a single time for the ES 2015 build. And after that, once we get the ES 2015 build, we just down level the syntax. So we just compile the ES 2015 build with TypeScript, I believe, to ES5. So this is the optimization. It just aims to speed up your build process a little bit.
Okay, so basically you don't have to go through the whole pipeline twice. You just go once, and then you take the resulting file and compile it again. And okay.
Yes. Yeah, and we also have an opt-out mode. So because we haven't been able to test this across like all the applications out there, if some applications fail to build, you can opt out to the previous behavior. We have documented this, I believe, on Angular.io.
Oh. Next question is, what is the most annoying issue or bug for the Angular team?
So currently, I guess it's quite annoying that we need to move Ivy forward in the entire Google, which it's a lot of code. It's 1,500 projects. So it's a lot of work, and there are some not very pleasant issues. So I'm fortunate to haven't worked on this recently. There are other people whose like daily life goals in this. So I guess this is pretty annoying, but in the same time comforting that we're reducing the breaking changes that we introduce. This is pretty annoying, I guess. And the second thing for me, I guess, is the entire ecosystem that sometimes we have to step on. There are some very non-deterministic things happening in NPM, in Webpack, like things like some magical things are happening with a lot of side effects on random places. So these are, I guess, the top two annoying things happening around.
Okay. The next question from Yuri is, should we expect type forms? And there's also a link to a tweet which I cannot show, unfortunately, but I think I know what it's talking about. But like, do you have visibility into that area? Is that going to happen at some point?
Yeah. So currently, the entire focus of the part of the team which is working in the Angular monorepo, in Angular/Angular that I mentioned a little bit ago, is to ship Ivy and to make it generally available. Once we ship Ivy, we're going to do like several sprints in fixing issues because probably we haven't been able to, probably some issues are going to show up. And once we do this, we're going to invest more time in forums. We're already talking to a lot of community members who have put a lot of effort into discovering some of the issues and writing them down. So we have a lot of plans for forums. Just want to make sure that the release of Ivy goes as smooth as possible.
Okay. Wait, where am I? I'm trying to figure out the approval system. Okay, so the next question, I'm not sure if I understand it, is, I guess, is something like NGX Translate gonna be a part of IATN? Is it correct? Like, who asked the question? Can you elaborate?
Yeah.
Do you understand it?
The answer is yes. Not specific NGX Translate, but recently I found like Mishko and a couple of other folks wrote a design document about a localization service, and which enables more like runtime behavior similar to NGX Translate, but with a bunch of improvements on top. So there is a design document on this, and we're going to start working on implementing the design document. Again, after we make sure it's Ivy is stable enough and we're comfortable with releasing it as part of version 9. I can share the design document after that with Kirill, and he can reshare it with you.
Cool. Sounds good. The next question is Angular CLI schematics. And I personally encountered this myself. They're really powerful, but they're not really well documented. And the question is, like, will the documentation be improved?
So we landed a guide on schematics, on how to get started with schematics as part of the last release, I believe, as part of version 8. I hear from a lot of people that we can put more effort in documenting the utility functions that schematics provide. So far, I think there are a lot of community blog posts which explain how to take advantage of schematics in more in depth. But if you have any suggestions on how to improve the documentation even further, I would love to hear them and share them with our documentation team.
Cool. So the next question is, why are Ivy bundles so huge? And it's ruining the whole idea.
So yeah, so there are two main parts of, I guess there are more than two, but let's talk about three main parts of the bonding process and where the size of the framework can come from. There is the framework itself, which is the runtime of the framework, like how the change detection runs. There is the code that the Angular compiler produces, which currently is NGC. In the future, this is NGTSC with Ivy. And there is also how tree shakeable is the source code and how minifiers and bundlers will be able to get rid of the stuff that we're not using. In terms of runtime, the first size, like how big is the framework, I believe currently Ivy is a little bit bigger than Vue Engine, but we are getting close to the runtime that we currently provide. So eventually it is going to get smaller. Around how much code we generate for a given component. I did some tests a while back, and Ivy is producing about 30% less code, still depending on what features of Angular you're using in the template. If it's a very dynamic template, then the source code with a lot of bindings, then the source code is a little bit larger. And in terms of tree shakeability, Ivy provides better tree shakeability. So what you have observed, it could be either a regression or maybe a bug that we're working on. In all cases, if you have observed huge bundles produced by Ivy, this is not supposed to be the case. So you can file an issue. Probably on Angular CLI would be the best place, especially after today's release.
Cool. So this kind of seems a bit like a duplicate. What's the next big thing after Ivy? I would consider this answered, or do you want to add anything?
Yeah, what I'm thinking is the next big thing is just taking advantage of the dynamic features that Ivy allows us to implement, progressive refrigeration, and I guess progressive refrigeration, just being able to use only the parts of the framework that you're currently interacting with, parts of the application.
Cool. The next thing is, what's the plan for ngDeep? Since it's been deprecated for like a few years, I guess?
Yeah. I have talked to the material team about that. We are not planning to get rid of ngDeep anytime soon until there is like really good solution that we can replace ngDeep with. We're thinking about CSS variables. They might provide the flexibility that to some extent the flexibility that ngDeep gives us, but there is no final plan about this yet. So far, like you can use ngDeep. Still, probably CSS variables are going to be the way forward, but we're not 100% sure about this.
Cool. Okay, this one is very specific. When, Minko, will you come to Moscow to take part in the Angular Moscow meetup?
Maybe next December.
Next December? Okay. People are happy here. Okay, in which types of projects will you recommend to use Angular, and when would you not recommend using Angular?
Okay, so I had a startup before I joined the Angular team, and I was using React there. And back then, I had an opinion that was, so I joined Google about a year ago, but I started doing the startup maybe 6 years ago. Back then, we had AngularJS, Ember, Backbone in its sunset, and React. And also Igor and a couple of other folks, they said that they're like killing everything from AngularJS. So I was aware that I'm going to go through a lot of pain if I start with AngularJS. And I decided to go with React back then. And back then, also, AngularJS was a little bit more monolithic compared to compared to React, I mean. This is still the case. Angular still provides the entire platform, and probably it is not as easy as React to just build one single component and add interactivity to your page, like this micro front-end thing that is very popular right now. But with Angular Elements, we're getting there. So my point about this was that I had the opinion that Angular is probably good for enterprise-like applications. And back then, my thoughts were that React was specifically good for making a very rich experience in a single page without like having to provide heavy forms and like horizontal approach with a lot of routes. Now I think that everything is getting quite close, and it's basically a matter of personal preference. With React set some constraints. I have talked to a lot of folks who are developing applications for TVs, for example, where you have very limited memory usage. And in TVs, React is not the best option because of the virtual DOM and a lot of memory consumption. Then Angular might be a better approach, or Vue, or Svelte, or whatever you feel more comfortable with. For me, probably I'll go with Angular. In the same time, I'm highly involved in the development of the framework, so I'm probably biased. But I think Angular fits most use cases, and if it doesn't fit any, I'll be happy to talk with you about why you think is that.
Cool. So the next question is, what about typing for routing?
What about that?
Do you like, is routing untyped? Anybody can elaborate? So the paths are type checked? How do you do that?
Perhaps that if you are trying to navigate to a certain route, that invalidates that the route actually exists and it's not typed.
Yeah, but how do you type check that? Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next question because I'm not sure what this one means. Next question is like, is it possible to use webform.net and Angular in one project?
Well, I have used web forms a while ago. It's a web app.
Like, why?
It's a website. I don't see why not. I mean, there in web forms, I remember there was something special about the view state that was transferred over cookies, right? I'm thinking about the right .NET technology. I think it's completely possible. Like, if you have any specific particular limitations that you can think of, we can discuss. I can't think of any reason why it shouldn't be possible.
Okay. Next question is, I cannot say I exactly understand it. Will there be like alternative decorator API which will be compatible with JS specs? Do you understand this question?
I'm currently involved. Yeah, I'm currently involved in the specification of decorators. It's it's a very foggy space. So there were a lot of different proposals about decorators which passed over the years. Initially, we started with the proposal coming from the Angular team, which wasn't for decorators, it was for annotations, which had only design time behavior kind of. They were aimed to be used only in order to be statically analyzed. After that, we went through a very dynamic approach where the decorator was able to be like absolutely anything, which wasn't ideal because it can de-optimize your source code that the JavaScript virtual machine puts a lot of effort into optimizing. So this is the current version of the TypeScript experimental decorator that we are using. And there is a new proposal about decorators, which is from about like maybe 2 months ago, which makes the decorators a little bit more static, but introduces some breaking syntactical changes. And for Angular, any of these proposals work because we are consuming the decorators primarily at build time. So we only need to statically analyze the source code. We just need to look at the code, collect some metadata, and that's pretty much what we need. Unless we're talking about JIT mode, which may require a little bit more like metaprogramming. I mean, there is no decorators. There is no accepted decorators proposal now, so I mean, Angular is compatible with this since there is no proposal which is widely accepted yet. Yeah, I guess that's the long answer.
Cool. Next question is Ivy and dynamic components. Is there like a public API, or will there be a public API for that?
Yeah, we have render component method, which is currently a private method. Very likely there is going to be such API that we're going to export publicly. We just need to think what would be the best way to achieve this. Like if we want to logically source all the dependencies of extracting and making render component public, there are some other things that we need to achieve along the way. For example, are we going to make ng modules optional or not? So once we figure out the story there, we're probably going to make this publicly available. It has very strong use case around Angular elements as well, and we want to work more on Angular elements because we see a lot of interest and a lot of use cases around this package.
Okay, I don't know how this happened and why people voted for this, but it seems like we're starting to run out of questions.
What's that?
Do regular dogs see police dogs and thinks, oh no, it's a cop? You don't have to answer this if you don't have anything to say. You can move on to the next question.
The police dogs, they should stay whether they're cops or not, right? It's not violate the wall.
Okay. Okay, let's move to, will Angular team create a WebAssembly module in the future?
Maybe that's far future.
Far future, okay, that's fair. What's your... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're following what's happening around Ember, for example, and they're looking at WebAssembly. Like we don't see particularly, like we may introduce WebAssembly support in the Angular CLI, or like Webpack already does, so there is nothing on our side. But probably it's not going to, like Angular's technology is not going to benefit much from running parts of the logic of the framework in WebAssembly, especially because of the slow communication between WebAssembly and JavaScript right now. Maybe in the future we're going to find a better use case.
Okay. Any plans to remove Zone.js?
There is a discussion about zoneless Angular. Completely remove it, probably we're not going to remove it because there are a lot of applications which depend on it. We may introduce a way to, like, we may introduce a simpler, more ergonomic way to use Angular without Zone.js. Yeah, that's the right answer, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Next question is like, what is your second favorite favorite framework, which is not Angular?
Yeah, I have. I have different aspects, like favorite frameworks from different aspects. I like some things in Ember, specifically in Glimmer. I like some things in React. I like things in Angular as well. In Vue particularly, I don't have that many favorite things, although I think it's a great framework. In Ember, there is very interesting work going on there around Glimmer. So in Ember, for example, they're shipping an entire virtual machine which interprets your templates which are in some bytecode format that was produced by your template compiler. So there are interesting computer science things going on there. In React, from the ergonomics perspective, I think it's pretty good. There are some, I'm not a huge fan of virtual docs paradigm for incremental computation, but it's not bad in general. And yeah, all of them have something interesting in them.
Okay. What are the cons of Angular?
I think currently we introduce a lot of complexity and tooling overhead that we're aiming to reduce. So it seems that it looks like Angular is very, very complicated when you look at it at first, and we want to fix that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next one is like, what do you think about Svelte, and is Angular actually going to like move in this direction later or something like that? I'm adding from my head.
I think the creator of Svelte is a very opinionated person. I think Angular has been in this direction like for years now. We introduced ahead of time compilation a few years ago, and yeah, I mean, we are doing similar things for a while now, and it's interesting that Svelte took this approach as well.
Okay. The next question, it's very specific. I know the person who is asking it. So they were trying to build a canvas rendering engine, but they only wanted to start working once the regular rendering engine encounters the canvas tag. So the question is like, would it be possible to have a rendering engines which switch like from component to component?
With the IV instructions, it's probably possible. We are going to expose the IV instruction set at some point so that we can allow people to introduce their custom instructions. And I see this potentially possible. If like, I'll probably not be able to write the code for this right now, but yeah.
Cool. What was the hardest bug to fix in Angular? That is already fixed, so it's not Ivy.
I guess it's something around tooling where with leaking state and nothing particular I can come up with right now. Probably something with leaking state and some side effects which had to be followed across a build pipeline. I don't know. I call the bad words there.
Okay. Okay, let's do like 3 more questions, so vote wisely now. Is there a plan to create a public RFC repository where people can propose architectural changes to framework?
So I guess the best place right now for this would be the Angular issue tracker. Currently, as you mentioned, we are not great in moving pull requests forward, which is like very unfortunate, but we are reading code issues for sure. And if we see a good idea which aligns with our timeline, because it might be an amazing idea, but at the same time, we have some timeline given the users we have, we are definitely going to consider this idea. So yeah, just the Angular issue tracker, this should be a good source.
Okay. What do you think about Blazor? Blazor? What's Blazor?
I haven't looked enough.
Oh, it's a .NET thing. Hmm?
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't looked enough at Blazor, so I have a good opinion.
Okay. Well, and the last question, which best feature was included in the last version of Angular, in your opinion?
So my favorite features are ng-deploy. So again, I'm mostly focused on performance, so I like features around performance. ng-deploy, differential loading. I also like the new ng-new app that we introduced today. Yeah. So make sure you update to Angular CLI next and run ng-new, and you're going to see a beautiful getting started app. I mean, I haven't been involved in the design of the app, so it's good.
Cool. And yeah, those are all the questions. Thanks a lot, Minka, for your time.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, looking forward to see you next December at Angular Moscow, right?
Yeah, please my calendar. Thank you very much.
All right, thank
You
you.
too.
Bye.
I'll probably see you on HolyJS, either in St. Petersburg or in Moscow.
Okay, okay, we'll talk about that.
Bye-bye.
Right. Thanks everybody for coming. The last thing, for people who stayed until the end, we have some Angular socks. So they're going to be on this table. And thanks everybody who came. Thank you.